Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. So first thing we should talk about is the importance of data visualization, right? We don't just visualize data for fun. Data visualization is about storytelling, right? We get data, we visualize it, we make sense of it, and then we make change. And a lot of the times, as you guys are aware, the title of today's meetup is Combating Fake News. A lot of the times what happens is the data gets skewed and manipulated in ways that are just unfair, to say the least. So my goal tonight is to show you guys how to, through using JavaScript, basically affect positive change. So first, I'm going to go a little bit over the technologies that we used. I used D3, which is a JavaScript data modeling library. I wouldn't say data visualization library because it's not. And coupled with that, I used a DCJS, which basically makes the JavaScript, I'd say 10 times easier. You avoid the issues with pathing. It creates SVGs for you with simple functions. And lastly, the data filtering was done through cross-filter, which is basically a manipulation of the raw data into different segments in which you can couple with and manipulate the data however need be. And I'm going to show you an example of something that I did with that right now. So this is a dashboard that I built over the last week after learning this D3, DCJS, and cross-filter stack. And as you can see, the topic here is prison recidivism in New York. So first of all, what is recidivism? Recidivism is the rate at which our nation has people leaving out of the correctional system and re-entering within 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 years, depending on the measure that they choose to do the study based on. And this is a compelling issue right now in our nation because, believe it or not, we spend billions, probably trillions of dollars every decade or so on our correctional institutions. Now, the reason why I chose to give you guys data on New York State in particular is because New York is made up of 63 counties, and 54 of those counties contain prisons. So I'm sure you guys have an understanding of how important prisons are in New York State. And just to tie it back to the whole idea of combating fake news, recidivism has been an issue for a lot of politicians in the argument for having education in the prison system. Now, there are college and prison programs in this particular state which have recidivism rates of 2.5%, which means within 1 to 3 years, the people who return to prison, the rate is very low. In comparison to our actual nationwide and New York State-wide, which I'm going to show you the data right now, that's actually represented at close to 70% for 1 to 3 years, and actually for 1 to 5 years, it goes on to about 75%. So 75% chance that if you enter prison, you're going back to prison is outrageous, it's horrendous, and we definitely need to do something about it. So how can we do something about it, right? First of all, we need to know. So if we look at this, this dashboard here, this dashboard can be, the data can be parsed by gender. So what I'm going to do is show you the rate between the years of 2008 and 2012 This is representative of the male population in New York State. 116,000 out of 123,000. That is the number of males that were released within that 4-year capacity from New York State prison. Compared to females, that's an almost 200% increase, which means that males are being incarcerated at a much more drastic rate. Now, if we look at the actual rate in which males return to prison, it mirrors that of our national rate. And the question that you may have is, why is that so? Well, it just so happens that New York State is one of the largest prison populations in our country. So, the United States of America itself has the largest prison population in the world. For one, it's 7 times larger than the second highest competitor, which is the UK. Our prison population is equal, or actually larger than every other country in the world combined, by far, to say the least. So, as you can see, New York State is the perfect example of the actual national average. We have a recidivism rate of 40%, I'd say. Now, if we look at a majority of where this data is made up at, it happens to affect young males between the ages of 18 and 35. And the question that we may have is, why does this happen? Well, between the ages of 18 and 35 is, youth, are youthful offenders. These are people who are, believe it or not, in the inner city counties, which are counties such as Queens, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Staten Island, things that you may have heard of your whole life, right? This makes up over 50%. This little highlighted area that I have right here makes up, and I'll show you right now, the difference between just these counties in the New York City area versus the entirety of New York State. Look at that. Look at that number. This little segregated area is over 50% of the New York State population for incarcerated individuals. This is basically saying, and this is a representation of our inner cities. This landmass, the rest of what you see, this grayed out area, is New York State in its entirety. And I mean, if this isn't a compelling reason for prison reform, then I don't know what is. I personally feel like this is just a major issue. Now, if we look on the other hand, specifically for the female population, we will see that the same thing applies. What these numbers here are showing you is that orange basically means that they have at least 2,000 people between the years of 2008 and 2012 who were released from that specific county. And I mean, I'm pretty sure there are women in the audience today who would probably understand that. You can't imagine how it would feel to go to prison and become adjusted and adapted to a situation to where you come home and are unable to function in society anymore. So these people, who are people just like me and you, are literally actually being trained to go back in. The system of corrections is not correcting in any way, shape, or form. What this data is actually showing us is that at a 75% rate, we are actually damaging everyone that we send to prison, just to keep the prison system afloat. So This is just one aspect of the importance of data visualization. It's just to paint stories about things like prison reform and prison recidivism, to make people aware that these problems exist, to take data and be able to express through manipulating data in non-harmful ways what the actual problems of our society are. Because if we don't know what the problems are, we won't be able to fix them. This is just a fact. Now, I know a lot of you did come here for the technical side, so let's lighten it up a little bit, right? I didn't forget you. I just want to make sure you understand. This is serious. So, DCJS, right? I'll give you a little breakdown of the technologies once again, right? DCJS is actually a library that relies upon D3. And the way that it does is, it basically, D3 creates paths manually. You have to put in lots of parameters. It's basically like a shortcut functionary type of library. So I'm going to show you just how easy it is to basically input your own filtering of data, to take data from a source and just couple it easily. Like, this is, I know there are probably a lot of experts here today, and if you're not an expert, you'll find out right now just how easy this is, and then you'll become an expert yourself. So just trust me. So I'll give you a breakdown of how this technology works and a step-by-step guide to how you can do it yourself. Because I'm pretty sure you guys have lots of things that are of interest to you that you would like to find out how you'd be able to properly display that data. So first we're going to come here and we're going to create a div. And I'm going to label that div. And if you're asking why I didn't pre-write the code, why there's no code snippets, it's because I want you to see just how easy it is. If I wrote code snippets, you wouldn't know what the hell was going on. So this is what's going on. We're going to create a div manually here. And we're going to give it an ID of select counties. And let's see. Right here, before we render our charts, this is where DC does all of the rendering. We're going to actually create what is known as a dimension. And a dimension is just the coupling of data so that it's rerouted and resorted in a way that cross-filter will be able to read the data properly. So let's make it so that cross-filter can read our data. So we're going to call county selector equals NDX, which is the name of my cross-filter object, just in case nobody is aware, dot dimension. And what we're going to do is we're going to choose, based off of the entirety of our data, what do we want to couple this data on? So we're going to sort this data through the property of counties. And this is our dimension. Secondly, what we need is a group. So we call county group. I'll call it 2 because I have a county group for our geographical map already, so we'll create 2. And we'll call that county selector dot group dot reduce count. Now, let me explain to you exactly what this does. We're taking our dimension, which is basically a rearrangement of our data, and we're grouping it. And we're grouping it by the total count of each entry for that specific data name. So for the county of Albany, there are 6,000. The county of New York, there are 14,000, and so on and so forth. We're literally doing manual grouping here. And then what we do is we actually create the select menu itself. And they've been saying that it's a waste of tax dollars and that funds would better be allocated into creating more vocational programs. But what we've seen as a society is that for the last, 4 decades, that these vocational programs have actually been just giving us the same 75% over a 5-year period recidivism rate, right? However, these college and prison programs, where people are actually able to learn something, has been giving us 2.5%, which is a 72.5% difference, and something that shouldn't even be argued. I mean, numbers don't lie. What percentage is it suitable for? Well, all right, 100%. It's suitable for 100% because 100% of the people in the world deserve the same opportunity that everybody else should give. So yes, I think everyone.
But I completely agree. But at the same time, like, as someone who didn't always know programming, like, programming's not suitable for everyone. So like,
I disagree with that as well. I think anybody can learn programming. That was really the main reason why I decided to even show you guys how to do the selector menu, because it's so easy. It's such a simple task, and if you already know a little bit of code, you'd be able to follow that with ease.